I'm joined today by JuCo advocate, CEO, and founder, Brandon Goble. And Brandon, I know you've been talking about this stuff. You are not a Johnny come lately on this topic. You've been speaking up for years, if not decades. We've only known each other for, I don't know, 5 years or so. But my guess is you were speaking up well before that. And in fact, you're the only white friend of mine that I met through basketball who became a friend based more on their topics about race relations versus speaking about basketball. So I know you've had a bunch of these conversations over the years, and taking your group, your closest group of black friends, roughly what percent of them would you say have experienced at a minimum nonviolent, unconstitutional harassment from the police?
You know, it's weird when you actually stop when somebody asks the question like that and puts it in that way, and you say, okay, well, if I have to think of a percentage, and you start going through your head, your closest friends, your closest black friends, and you have a harder time thinking of ones that you don't know a specific incident that happened to them, right? So, you think of 20 friends in your head and you go, well, shit, every one of these guys, I know of something that happened. I know a story. I talked to them after it happened. Whatever. And that's not counting the ones that you don't know about, that they just never said anything about or whatever. So, I mean, if you have to put a percentage on it, I mean, it's the vast majority. I would have venture to guess, because I have a harder time coming up with friends that I know that haven't had it, and it being an incident that I know about than ones that don't. So if it's 90%, would I be shocked? Heck no.
Yeah, well, that kind of mirrors my own experience. I used to say that when discussing this with white people, I'd say, guys, you just have to understand that, one, we fail to connect the culture. The culture that permits the murders, which is kind of all we ever see or talk about. And so white people will say, that's tragic, but it's isolated. This is an overreaction because it's a very isolated event. And we don't connect the culture between the unconstitutional nonviolent harassment with the non-lethal brutality with the murder. And so it's true that, like, as a statistical percent, the murders may look like this, but the brutality looks like this. And the harassment goes way off the fucking screen. Right. Way off, right? And we fail to 100%. Connect the culture. And so I've had these conversations for decades. And then in doing these interviews, I used to say I don't have a single black friend who hasn't at a minimum been nonviolently, unconstitutionally harassed. But now through having these sort of more formal conversations, I do have 3 black friends who've never been unconstitutionally harassed by the police. But that's out of, like, I'm talking about literally 100 conversations.
Right.
And then the follow-up to them has been, well, what about your closest friends? And they're like, oh yeah, they've all been fucked with at one point. I just, I'm a unicorn, I guess. I just, got lucky. So right. So you said 90%, but what you also said, as far as you're not aware of any black friends who haven't had it happen. Well, let's take 90%, and you said the word clear majority. Is it fair to say, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but again, white people continually insist these things are quote unquote isolated.
Right.
Based on your conversations, would you say these problems are isolated or pervasive?
No, it's a complete systemic issue, because you have to think about it. You can't use the term isolation when, as a black parent, and I've had these conversations with my friends who have kids. As a black parent, they have to have discussions with their children about all the perfect do's and don'ts on an interaction with a police officer, right? And they have to warn them early. I mean, we're talking 6, 7, 8 years old, right? Warn them early about, if something happens, here's everything you have to do. I've never thought of having that conversation with my kids. I've never been in a situation where I've had an interaction with an officer. Usually it's been being pulled over for speeding or something, where I've thought about anything other than, shit, I hope I don't get a ticket. Like, nothing else has ever even crossed my mind. And that alone, for me, is the true definition of a systemic issue, where every other person that I know who's black has to worry about these other things, and does worry about these other things, and has to have these conversations with their kids to help keep them safe. Like, if that's isolated, I mean, are we just making everything up, right? Are we creating this fantasy monster out there that doesn't actually exist? Of course not. They have to worry about these things, because these things happen every day. And when we're talking about, like just bringing to mind immediately my 20 closest black friends, and we're talking about whether or not they've been harassed. As I go through each story, it's not even being harassed. It's the like really fucking with them. It being pulled out of the car and pressed down onto the ground, or attacked in the street or something like that. And it's like, that's not harassment. That's the next level, right? That's the brutality part of it. That I know when I get pulled over, I'm not getting pulled out of that car, right? I'm not worried about like somebody freaking the heck out and pulling their gun on me because I reach for my ID or I reach for my insurance or something like that. Never crossed my mind. Not in a million years. So yeah, to say it's isolated is just that's the thing that's in the fantasy world, is thinking that something like that is isolated and that it's not systemic.
Yeah, it really is frustrating and infuriating and asinine when I hear that, because it's not it's always in the train of thought is always, well, let's just move it. It's isolated, and then dismiss and move on with your day. And yeah, I mean, some of the stories I've heard from longtime friends of mine. I mean, my former high school football teammate, Robert Mason, we used to call him Bobby. It was weird in the interview to keep remembering to call him Robert. He said that was his preferred name to be called by these days. But I had no idea that he's in high school. He lived in a white neighborhood, and he had like 6 black friends over and 1 white friend. And the cops rolled up, and they with guns drawn, and put all the black kids in handcuffs, and kept telling the white kid, "You got to quit bringing these people over into this neighborhood. It's just not going to go well." And the white kid's like, "It's not my house," and they're like, "Quit protecting your friends." Like, and again, the white kid's not even in handcuffs, and all the black kids are. And these are high school kids, right? Yeah. Like, we just don't. I mean, I've been at house parties where there was alcohol and drugs and this and that, and the cops have come and busted the party up, never with a gun drawn.
Yeah.
Like, the cops have shown up at least 25 parties I was at in high school or college, where they were there to break it up. The neighbors called to complain about noise, and we never ever saw the gun, ever. And yet somehow, my friend Robert, they pull the gun out. So, and as far as the talk, like you were saying, it's like a lot of white people are like, well, something like this will happen, and they'll say, well, my parents taught me to respect the police. Bullshit. Your parents never talked to you about that at all. I know that mine didn't. And if they did talk to you, it was in a very generic, make sure you show police officers respect. It was never keep your ID in the visor, not the glove box.
Yeah.
Make sure both hands are on the wheel when the cops approach. Do not reach for anything without asking them permission. Make sure you say yes or no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, at all times.
I can't even wrap my head around my parents trying to have that conversation with me.
Exactly. And I can't either. And the problem is not that black parents aren't having the talk. The problem is that they still need to.
Yeah.
And it's like on the death
with plenty of evidence for needing to, right? It's not this like, okay, we're past that. Like, you're just being overreactive. No. I mean, we get new evidence every day now. And especially now that we have social media. I mean, holy shit. Could you imagine if we'd had social media 30 years ago? The number of stories was not, or the number of incidents were not lower, and that this is a new thing. We just have social media now, and all of a sudden everybody goes, oh shit, like this is a problem, like a big one, like that happens a lot, right? The idea that isolation exists in this is just, everybody comes at these conversations from their own experience. And so you have to break through this wall of experience where I grew up in the military, and I lived in places around the world that everybody was mostly white. And when I went to high school, almost everybody in my high school was mostly white. And so coming from a sense of, if I only take it from a sense of experience, then I look at it and I say, well, yeah, it's isolated, because I think about, like you said, in high school, if we were at a party and it got broken up, or if I got pulled over, or hell, when kids at school would do crazy shit and the cops would show up, like, wasn't that big of a deal. It was, oh man, he's going to get suspended. Right. That was the thing that everybody was worried about. Like, oh, you're going to get suspended. You're going to get expelled. Like, not, are they going to shoot you? Right. So for your own level of experience, if all you do is put your blinders on and go into this tunnel vision mode of, well, based on my experience, this is an isolated incident. Well, no shit, for white people, it's isolated, because we don't experience it. Like, unless you grow up in a neighborhood around a majority population of black people, you're not going to see it on a daily basis. You're still also never going to experience it yourself, really, or at least at the rate. So now, unless you're willing to break through that experience wall and recognize that your experience is not comparative to a young black person's experience growing up, you're going to always think it's isolated, and you're doing that on purpose at this point, because we have enough information out there now, and we have social media, and we have 24-hour news, and we have people speaking up saying that this is a problem. So if you're saying right now that this is isolated, you're intentionally ignoring all of this mountain of evidence in favor of your own isolated experience.
Yeah, like if Buzz Aldrin told us about his trip to the moon, we wouldn't reflexively disbelieve him, even though we've never been to the moon.
Right.
And it's long past time for white people to have enough empathy to believe black people. And I remember when I was in high school, so I went to a nearly all-white school from kindergarten through 8th grade. And my neighborhood was maybe literally all white, maybe 100% white. And so I didn't have many, if any, interactions with black people growing up. And then, I went to Lamar, a very diverse public school for high school. And I start to hear these stories. And I absolutely had the reflexive, like, yeah, the cops pulled me over again for no reason. Fucking hand on the gun, usual shit. And I'm like, for no reason? Like, come on, you must have rolled a stop sign or something, right? And they were like, nope. And like the 5th or 6th time I heard stories like this, it was like, I've had about 25 great awakenings on this topic. That was one of the 25.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh my God, like this is happening to every single relatively new black friend of mine that I'm meeting.
Right.
And it's like and so it's like there's this reflexive racism-based sort of automatic disbelief because it's outside of our own experiences.
Right.
And we need to have enough empathy. Like you said, the evidence is out there. And then the other thing on the talk is that, white people are, well, why wasn't he respectful to the cop? Why was he talking? And it's like when the government violates our rights as white people, we go ballistic.
Yeah.
But black people are supposed to be submissive when having their rights violated. That's a fucking horrible way to feel.
Yeah.
Like the black rights matter too. Black people are American citizens protected by our Constitution. And if the police they're supposed to protect and serve, they're supposed to uphold the Constitution. Instead, they're systematically violating it and targeting a group of black people. And black people are supposed to what? Say thank you and kiss their ass while their rights are being violated? We wouldn't do that. And you kind of referenced earlier, like the school situation. We got into scuffles at the all-white school. They never called the cops. Right. At Lamar, black and brown kids went away in handcuffs for fighting on campus.
They had the cops close by, ready to go all the time, right? To come in and crack some skulls and whatever. I remember when we first got an officer, because I was in high school during Columbine, right? So That was the first time. Right after that is the first time that there was ever any sort of like police presence anywhere near campus, right? And it basically ended up being a rent-a-cop kind of thing. And I remember thinking that this wasn't like a real police officer. This wasn't something like nobody even treated that person with the kind of respect or whatever that you would have for a cop, right? Like suddenly showing up on campus. Because for us, that would be like a holy shit moment, right? That there's what has happened in the world. There's this cop, but then you go to, like Solomon Heine, for example, like where he went to high school. I guarantee you, the cops around, whole different story, right? They're looking for somebody to go get. They're looking for something for them to go and mess with. And so again, it goes back to experience where, for me, like a cop in high school was like, whatever. Like there's Joe, the local cop who's just kind of walking around because, now we're in this new world where people go and shoot up schools. And these other kids have had cops in their high school forever. And these cops are looking to get somebody. And it's, starts before then and then continues on through these kids' high school years where there's this, we versus they thing, and the cops are more than happy to perpetuate that.
Yeah, they really are. And the over-policing, it's like I said, I was shocked that high school kids were going away in handcuffs, getting into a fight on campus, because that just wasn't my experience.
I got in a fight with somebody and got taken to the principal's office and was told, don't do it again. I'll see you in church on Sunday.
Exactly.
Like it was a fight, right? Like, if I'd have been at your high school, like I'd probably gotten in, not only would I probably gotten my ass kicked, I probably would have been in a lot more trouble. But
I vividly remember a white friend named Bruff socked a white kid named Frells at the cafeteria, hit him in the head, knocked him down. And that was an issue at school with the principal. And this is the same school that I saw my friend Don Price get carted away in handcuffs after getting into a fight. And it was just like the over-policing is just it's like if they catch a white kid with a sack of weed, the general, of course, there are lots of white people get arrested for weed, but broadly speaking, we don't want to ruin a good kid's life. And then if it's a black kid, we got to get him in the system now. So when he does something serious later on, he's got a lengthy record so the judge can do the right thing and send them away for, decades at a time. And it's just a completely different mentality. I mean, I ask people all the time, because people cling to the crime stats. Well, black people are more criminal, and it's like, well, if they do a sweep through a housing project and arrest 10 black kids smoking weed while not doing a sweep through a liberal arts college and
where's
black kids smoking
where's the sweep through the gated neighborhood for all the housewives bumping cocaine?
Correct. When you look at stop and frisk, I mean, I lived in New York for a year. Every one of the blazer wearing, like super elite private day school Manhattan kids, they all have a sack of coke in their pocket. Like every single fucking one of them almost.
Yeah.
But the stop and frisk was only applied to Puerto Rican neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, and that type of thing. So yeah, of course the crime stats paint a picture, but that's because of systemic racism in policing, right? Any group that, I guarantee if the police said, we're going to apply stop and frisk, we're going to start frisking every high school kid in a blazer. One, their attorney parents and millionaire parents and senator parents would go ballistic and it would end on the spot. They would suddenly be concerned about Fourth Amendment issues.
Yeah.
But what they mostly would find is a lot of drugs on those kids.
Yeah.
Like a lot. But they're not searching them. And consequently, they're not being arrested. And consequently, people get to point at this crime stats and say, see, there's data to support my racism,
If you think about like just college, right? Like I went to a majority white college at Colorado State University. And at the time, weed wasn't legal in Colorado. And I can't imagine what on a football game day, right? You go through the student section. If you just did stop and frisk at a football game, or any time on campus or something where you have this majority white 18 to 22-year-old population, everybody be going to jail, right? Like everyone's going to jail. And why is that any different though than going and doing a sweep, like you said, of a neighborhood of mostly black kids? But they don't do it. They don't do it on the college campus, right? It's like, okay, we know you're college kids, like, so just keep it down and just, kind of do your thing away. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, if somebody's doing the same thing in college, and it's like, hey, just tone it down, make sure you go to class, like, don't cause a ruckus, you'll be fine, whatever. And then you've got a kid in a black neighborhood where they go and sweep, and they're like, yo, you're going away for 5 to 10 for that. What are we talking about?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I tell white people all the time that insist that the arrest rates and the crime stats are legit. You've never been on a liberal arts college campus in your life if you think that drugs are exclusively a problem in the black community. You've never been to a fucking Fish show either.
No, oh my gosh.
Talk about flagrant. Like, everyone there is not only using drugs but selling drugs.
Yeah.
Out in the open. And with a lot of police, off-duty police around who are hired for security, I can't recall anybody.
They're just at a concert. It's fine. They're just, they're having a good time. Like, it's whatever. And then you've got a black kid on the corner that, has a dime bag or something and is just standing there, right? Not doing shit. And because he's black standing on a corner, he'll get stopped and frisked, and then he's going away.
Have you read over it's called Campaign Zero? There's a bunch of policy solution proposals out there. But Campaign Zero it's like 10 bullet points, and I agree with probably 7 of them. And there's a lot more I'd probably add if they asked me. But one of their points is that so many of these petty crimes, like loitering in particular, they're so selectively applied. Yeah. Like, I guarantee you and I could go to a corner store and hang out in front of the corner store all day and not have the cops roll up and say, ask what we're doing.
Nope.
And yet, so to a cop, as white people, we're hanging out or waiting on a friend or whatever normal thing we might be doing. But if it's a black person, then it's loitering's the excuse to frisk, see if they got anything on them. And it's like, well, why can't a black person wait on a friend?
Yep.
Well, why can't a black person hang out? And, I mean, you and I feel frustrated by this. So imagine to all the white people watching how black people feel. Just the stories. It's like, one of my good friends is a man named Jeffrey Roberson, and the cop put a gun to his temple because he politely requested the cop not call him boy. He was at his brother-in-law's funeral, county in Southeast Texas, and the cop said, "What are you doing in these parts, boy?" Because he drives a nice car, because he works his ass off, right?
Yeah.
And imagine that. Cops hate successful black people. And we say, well, not all cops. I used to say they're good cops and they're bad cops. Now I'm firmly of the view that it's an absolute prerequisite, a requirement, in order for a cop to think of himself as being a good cop, to speak up and inform on the bad cops and do whatever they can to root their ass out.
Yeah. If
there's so many good cops, why don't they take a vote and find a union head who's not a racist, goose-stepping cocksucker, right? If they're all they got to do is vote. They take a vote. The guy's gone.
Yeah.
And yet,
there's a pervasive culture in police enforcement where you don't speak up, you don't say things, you don't whatever, and I, the funny thing is you don't think there's any good cops. I'm not fucking stupid. Of course there are good cops, right? I'm not talking about whether or not there are. Stop. Like, this is a massive population of people, but okay, that's fine. But if you're going to continue to be a good cop, right? Like, fucking starting right now, right? Taking advantage of this momentum that exists around the country now. You better start saying stuff, and you better start speaking up. And I think that's something that is happening culturally here in the larger population, where it is now more comfortable. Thank God for us. Now we're more comfortable, right? To come out and say things, right? Like, we've never had, just make a microcosm of our coaching community. When have we ever had coaches come out and say the things that they're saying now, right? Like, it's now become, you better say something or you're saying something else quietly, right? And that's the thing that needs to transition into policing, is that that feeling is sweeping through the country in all walks of life, not just coaching. And it needs to now take hold in policing too. It needs to be that when your partner even just makes a racist joke and uses the N-word and stuff like that, call their ass out. Like, be okay with calling their ass out for that. And that slowly, and I know a joke or using a word sounds like such a small thing in comparison to the ridiculous stuff that happens every day in policing, but it's got to start somewhere, right? And that momentum has to build, and they have to become more comfortable with rooting out the people that are doing this stuff every day. I mean, we see it in the protest videos, right? If you just want some simple evidence of the look the other way nature of policing, watch the videos when a cop comes out of a line, when somebody's just standing there through hands up and bashes them in the head with a baton and nobody does shit, right? Like, there's a whole line of cops and one cop comes out and just clubs somebody and nobody does anything. I mean, that look the other way culture. Now take that. That's public, right? That's super public. That's very concentrated, tons of eyes. They know there's news cameras, whatever, and still nobody does shit. So imagine what happens when nobody's watching.
Yeah, no doubt. And like again, you talk about a couple of things. So I interviewed technically he's not even that young of a man anymore, but did you ever coach before you started this?
No, I was on the analytics side.
Okay. Well, like, when you coach, you call people kids and you kind of think of them that way forever. So I'm regularly like, oh man, you're such a great kid. It's like, oh, you're 37.
Right.
But Lamar Glass is a police officer in Dallas. And he tried to start an association inside the association for younger cops because he wanted to basically teach them how to police black people. In other words, like, don't roll up, like the villain cop from the movie. Roll up and be like, man, how you guys doing? Let me get you a Gatorade. Go to the park and hoop. Develop relationships to where people on his beat call his cell phone instead of 911.
Right.
Because they know that what he wants is safe neighborhoods and good relationships with the community.
I think that's what a lot of people misunderstand too about the whole defund the police movement and the movement towards a community policing effort, is that's what they're trying to go for, right? Like everybody says, oh, defund the police. So what, you just don't want cops? You just don't want anybody around and you just everybody run amok? Like, that's not what it means. Like, don't be fucking stupid and go read.
I mean, it's a stupid fucking brand. Liberals are not good at the brand thing.
Yeah. Like, defund the police. Like,
bumper sticker politics. The right dominates the left on that topic. Like, Law and Order is such a better brand than defund the police. It's like, right. How about reform the police? Like, can't you see how that's going to politically damage?
The idea is that you're creating more guys like your guy there, right? Where he's policing within his own community and establishing stronger community relationships, as opposed to like, all right, I'm gearing up because I'm going into that neighborhood, right? Like, that's never going to work. You've now created a prison system essentially, where you're now looking at a certain neighborhood as cell block D, and you're gearing up intentionally. The second you cross that street, you're ready for a fight. That's never going to work.
No.
It's just a powder keg ready to go off at any moment. And it does all the fucking time, because they're not, you have police that are not policing their neighborhood, that don't have any sort of community relationships, that don't have any sort of community connection. Could you imagine if all of a sudden your cops are strong community members, right? Like they're people that everybody knows, they're people that live around them, and all of a sudden now our guy who is just standing on the street corner and is waiting for a friend is just waiting for a friend, right? As opposed to
very common, normal thing to do.
Yeah, like you got to get to the point where there's a strong enough connection between your police and your community that when you're black and you're waiting for a friend, you're literally just fucking waiting for a friend, and that's it. And
I'm sorry.
That's what the whole defund the police thing is about. Not like, well, all right, guess we're not going to have cops anymore, so good luck.
No, I mean the ironic thing is that, again, a terrible brand. It's like toxic masculinity is another terrible brand. It's a real thing. It's a terrible brand.
Yeah.
Like,
and believe me, I'm with you. Like, defund in the sense that, like, yeah, let's probably get rid of the APCs that are rolling out there with 50-inch tires and gun turrets. Like, probably not going to need those, fellas. And I tell you what, if we need those, we actually do have a thing that has those, that does need those, and they are called the National Guard. Like, so let them do that. If you come into a situation where you need an armored personnel carrier with a 50 cal on the top, let the guys that are trained to use that shit have it. Not Sergeant Malloy over here who just likes to play army man. That's not what we're doing here.
And the irony is that, again, a terrible brand, but the irony is cops have been calling to defund the police, just not in those words. I mean, the police chief in Dallas a couple of years ago, he said that, like, look, you guys are beating the shit out of us. And I get it. We make mistakes. But damn it, why are we in charge of dealing with a bipolar kid who makes his mom feel threatened? Why are we in charge of dealing with the homeless? Like, a lot of these situations that arise, damn it, we're not trained for this shit. That's not our role. You as society have slid all this bullshit on our plate that you didn't want to fucking deal with. And now you're pissed off that we're not dealing with it the way you want us to. Go fuck yourself. And I understand that sentiment. He's right. It's interesting that that's what Defund the Police is trying to do, is say, hey, cool. We're going to beef up social workers and have 24/7, 365 social work responses for the homeless.
Right.
We're going to have mental health professionals respond. We're giving you exactly what you've always asked for.
A huge part of Defund the Police is actually addressing certain issues with the proper responses.
Correct.
By shifting that funding over there. But the nutcase lady that was she the St. Louis mayor or something that came on and started reading off the names and addresses of people that wanted to, quote, defund the police. They had sent her letters saying this is where we would prefer to see, the funding go. And of course, some of those were radical ridiculousness, right? Where it's like, I want to see 100% of all police funding go to whatever.
Flowers.
It was just, but she gets up there and she, rather than having an active, constructive discussion about, like, what defund the police means, what positives from that movement there are and how those can be put into practice, she decided to get in front of a camera and start reading off the names and addresses of these people, hoping that, some nutbag is going to go out there and screw with them. We've got people in powerful positions of leadership that can't process what this actually means. Like, this is not that hard of a discussion to have once you actually stop and go, okay, what does it mean? What is it trying to accomplish, and why?
And by the way, I'm glad you brought up St. Louis, the pink shirt machine gun guy.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, like, he pointed his barrel at her like 5-6 times during the video. It's like,
yeah, not real good at muzzle control.
You please don't purchase a gun that you can't handle.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, independent of that situation. But that was the mayor's gated community. They were on their way to peacefully protest in front of the mayor's house, probably over those remarks, right? And the gate was not ripped off, as the right-wing media liars keep insisting.
Yeah.
And now it technically wasn't. A lot of people on the left were saying it was basically walking down a public street, which is not true. It was in a private gated community.
Kind of gone through that.
But how do those two morons and racists, how do they not piece together that they live on the same block as the mayor, and that's probably where the protesters are heading? Right. For their mind to jump directly to, they're here to murder us and our dog. They even said that. Like, what? Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? You know? And it speaks to and so much of racism, it's on the subconscious level.
Right.
Like you see a black person, you lock your door. You clutch your purse. Yep. And even my black friends who've not been unconstitutionally harassed by the police have experienced that. Show up at a nice hotel. You sure you're at the right hotel?
Yeah.
Or they're at a country club meeting a friend for lunch, and a woman comes and hands them her car keys. Like, sorry, bitch, I'm not the valet. Right. You know, like I don't know any black people that haven't had those types of experiences, or or like, how about this? The corner store in a white neighborhood, they don't make the kids line up, only two in at a time, backpacks with the front. We just go in.
Right.
And we did plenty of stealing as white teenagers.
Right.
Like plenty, you know.
My buddy used to steal from King Soopers every day for lunch, not because he couldn't afford it, but because he thought it was fun.
Yeah.
Like,
and he wasn't asked to keep his backpack at the front, and
the
people following him around, and it's just it truly is pervasive. So I know you got a busy day ahead of you. I got another one of these coming up with the great Dinos Trigonis.
Oh boy.
Which I'm extremely excited about, because you never know what the fuck he's going to say. It's so I'm pretty pumped up about that one. But I wonder if you got anything else to add, or any questions you want to fire at me before I let you go.
I mean, I just here's something that I guess has maybe bothered me a little bit in not really the Zoom calls. I don't know. It's hard to complain about people saying things, like it's not a complaint that you're saying something, but it's more of a complaint that, like, okay, cool, now that you've said something, like, let's actively, like, be a part of doing something, right? All the statements that came out, and the little social media posts and all that sort of thing, like that's fine. I'm not saying don't do that. But it does bother me when I get on some of these calls, some of these panel discussions and all that sort of stuff, because activism is the key here, but discussion is absolutely part of that whole thing. And in coaching, we already know that the vast majority of coaches are white, especially head coaches. Why is it when I get on these Zoom calls that the vast majority of the coaches on there are black? Shouldn't be, right? If we're really going to have, like, discussions, if we're really going to affect change, and I get on a call where I'm speaking or I'm just listening, and it's about race in coaching, and it's about how we can make things different, and there's 100 coaches on there, why are 90 of them black? So it needs, like, I appreciate all the posts that everybody's having, but start doing some stuff, guys. Like, and start doing stuff if you're white, because racism in general is not a black people problem. It's a white people problem. This is something that we do, and this is something that we created, and this is something that we have supported in one way or another for, since 400 years, right? And then have doubled down on it in a lot of ways, right? In the systemic nature of it. So if you're actually going to affect change, putting out a social media post is not going to change anything. And you cannot be worried about the look of like, oh, well, I don't want to go and publicly say some of the things that I'm, supposedly thinking, according to my social media posts or whatever. Like, you got to go out and actively do shit. Like, I've got a business I have to run and a livelihood that I have to protect. And I'm not taking a moral high ground here in comparison to anybody else, but like, I know I've lost followers, business supporters, things like that through some of the stuff that I've said. But Jesus Christ, if we're not going to use the platform that we have right now to actively take control of take some of this momentum and affect change, what are we doing? There's not going to be a better time than right now, where there's like this wave of positive change just waiting to break through. Like, help break through. The majority of people are not going to ostracize you for it. If you're a white coach and you come out and say, all right, enough's enough. Like, this is bullshit. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Give me 3 things that you're going to do on a daily basis that are going to help affect change. Nobody's going to say like, oh, well, screw this guy. He just doesn't like white people. Like, I get a couple of those emails. I get a couple of those DMs. Like, oh, you just don't like white coaches anymore? Like, yeah, that's it. You got me. I just don't like white people. I don't like white coaches anymore. And, whatever.
So like, fragile. So fragile.
Get out of here. Like, every day I know I wake up with a head start. Every day. And I will forever, for my entire life, regardless of how much change happens during our lifetime, you and I are going to wake up every day with a head start. Can you imagine waking up every day and being asked to run a 100-meter race, but everybody else that's running against you gets a 10-yard head start? Like, what? Why is that? That's not, in our lifetime, like, that's not going to change. So what we can do, though, is try and shrink that head start as much as possible every day. And that's all you can do. And so when I get on these calls, I get on social media and I see on social media all of this talk, and then I get on the actual, like, see people face to face. That's the funny thing about this Corona thing now, is that, like, this is the first time that you and I have actually sat down and seen each other face to face like this. When it comes face to face time, why is it that when I look at all the other coaches, they don't look like me? That's a problem. Because now when it comes face to face time, not a lot of guys are stepping up and saying, here's what I'm going to do. Like, every one of these calls, Russ Williamson is on there. And Russ Williamson is saying, like, I'm in, I'm going to help. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to be a part of. Even if in this environment, it's just a discussion, but over here, it's actively doing something. Russ Williamson is always there. I need to start seeing more than just Russ Williamson on every one of these calls. And until just simple things like that happen, like, I don't believe you. Sorry. You
talk about action, and it's like I've had white head coaches ask me, like, because I challenge them. I say, it was a great statement. What's next?
Yeah.
What I'll get a lot of times is, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes it's an excuse. Sometimes it's an actual question. I can tell you what I've been pushing them toward, and who knows if they will or not. But every single head coach can get a meeting with a level appropriate political representative, right? If you're the head coach at Wofford can get a meeting with the mayor of Spartanburg, for sure.
Yep.
The head coach at Colorado State can definitely get a meeting with the mayor of Fort Collins, 100%, and the congressperson who serves that area, right? The head coach at UCLA can get a meeting with Gavin Newsom. And so my message to white head coaches is, whether it's a state rep, a city council person, a mayor, a congressperson, a senator, a governor, a police chief, you can get meetings with level appropriate politicians and educate yourself on the solutions. You can Google policy solutions to end police brutality, and you're going to find the Cato Institute, a nonpartisan libertarian think tank, has paper after paper after paper after paper. read up and make yourself a little 15-point bulletin and go to the mayor and say, I've been reading on this and here are 15 reforms I think might help. And the mayor might say, go fuck yourself. Or the mayor might say, we can't get 8 of these through the union, but maybe 7 of them do.
Yeah.
Now you've really done something tangible and real and good and righteous. And that can happen. And to the assistant coaches, I'm saying, push your head coach in that direction. So.
And I get that some of these things are daunting and scary to people that, because they're trying to protect, their livelihoods, and they're trying to make sure that if they do something, that it's not going to have a negative, hurtful impact on them. And so that's scary, right? That's tough, especially if it's something that you've never done before. And so things like that, for sure. And then even on like a microcosm level of like backing it off all the way into trying to have some immediate impact and tangible, noticeable change in our business. I get all sorts of calls all the time on hires, right? Head coaches call me constantly saying, hey, who would you recommend for these jobs? And I'm more than happy to do that. And I love doing it. And I feel like we do a pretty good job of drawing some attention to some guys that maybe weren't getting attention before. And that's great. But call me when you don't have an opening, right? Like call me when you say, hey, you know what? Give me 5 black coaches that I don't know and give me their numbers. I want to call them and I want to talk to them and I want to get to know them and I want to start networking with them. And then that way, the next time when you have an opening, don't call me. Like, you've got 5 people that you have now gotten to know and 5 people that you have expanded your network with. And you now can make a choice because you actually have a network that involves people that don't look like you, as opposed to, having to say, well, shoot, I've either got my black coach position, which is just a whole nother thing. Right. Or, hey, maybe if like you already have a black coach, but you have another opening, like you just spent a year talking to 5 awesome black coaches and getting to know them and networking with them or whatever. Hire one of those guys. You can have 2 black assistants. I don't know if that's, written down somewhere. People need to know that, but you can. So like call me when you don't have an opening and just expand that network and expand those people that or that you get to know. Because I tell you what, there's a hell of a lot of awesome coaches out there. Unbelievable people, unreal basketball minds. The diversity of their experience trumps the diversity of their skin color, and they're perfect people to help not only coach to win games, but also lift your program up and lift your players up and all these wonderful people. And they don't get the looks because they're not part of that in network, And so then when it comes hire time and I say, yeah, hire this guy. And they say, well, I don't know him. Well, fuck, get to know him. Like, let's get to know him before you have a job opening then. Right.
Yeah. I give that same advice to assistant coaches. I say, don't start calling a head coach when the job's open. You figure out a way to get to know the head coach beforehand.
Yep.
And it's somewhat amusing and somewhat fascinating and somewhat horrifying that I just learned that you're in the same category that I am, and that is that the white guy that other white guys call about a black issue. I'm always like, don't you know, we've been working in basketball for 30 years, and you can't think of. I mean, if I got a head coaching job tomorrow, I can, off the top of my head, I'm not going to do it because the ones I left off might be upset with me, but off the top of my head, I could list like 50 or 75 black coaches I'd hire in a heartbeat.
Right.
And it's like, why the segregation inside of basketball relationship circles is just horrifying. You go to the Final Four, and it's like a table of white coaches next to a table of black coaches. They all know each other. They barely even speak. Yep. Or like the pickup ball in the morning. It's like totally segregated. It's like a white pickup game at Gym A and a black pickup game at Gym B. And it's not literally 100% segregated, but it's really, really segregated.
Yeah, this is not a like the
No.
same thing with the experiential side of it when we said, yeah, we understand like not all coaches are this way. Not all head coaches, don't have a list of great, black coaches that they're ready to hire and whatever. We get it. But like, come on, like everybody take a step back, take a breath, look at the landscape in front of us. There is a reason that the vast majority of players are black and the vast majority of coaches are white. And a lot of it is not even intentional. I will go ahead and admit that there is a lot of it that is not intentional. I think it's a nature of, again, being comfortable with who you know, right? So now you've really got to make an effort to get to know somebody that doesn't look like you. Get to know a lot of people that don't look like you. And I think you'll find that you are going to go, geez, I've been missing out. I've been missing out on all these wonderful coaches, these wonderful people, these basketball minds that can really, really help me. Geez, what have I been doing this whole time? And then there is also the intentional ones out there. And, the guys that are intentional with it are going to probably end up being exposed more. There's going to be a lot more people whispering about them at the Final Fours. There's going to be a lot more people talking about them without naming names on podcasts and Zoom calls and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, the guys that are intentional about not diversifying their staffs are going to look around and realize, they figured me out. And that's hopefully going to start becoming a thing of the past.
I've been chopping balls for years. A random mother at one of my camps, hey, this school's recruiting me. You don't want to go there. That guy's a complete racist.
Yep. And
she's like, well, what do you mean? And I'll give examples. Well, here are the 6 black people I know who played for him, the types of things he says in practice. I don't think you should go there. And I tell when I talk about recruiting, the 3 big rules are, number 1, it never ends. You have to treat your players well, like you did when you were recruiting them.
Yep.
Or some might transfer. And a lot of times a freshman's not playing, but he's going to be a starter as a junior. But you lose him because you didn't treat him well and because he's not playing. Whereas if you intentionally treat him well, he's probably going to stay. So recruit your own kids is 1. Number 2 is every phone call, every email, every text has to be minded. You've got to return calls, reply to texts, answer emails. Because there's so many like I like Rick Barnes. You got to know someone in Jordan Clarkson's camp reached out to Texas, but they didn't get back. And so, boom, there's an NBA player at Tulsa who would have, no one's going to choose Tulsa over Texas, right? So, and then the third rule is that you don't know who can help you, and many who claim they can, in fact, cannot. But anyone can hurt you. Anyone. Yeah. I can think of one time in my life that I've had a school added. There was a time that Virginia was added to Kerwin Roach's list because of me. Okay. And I don't think they stayed on the list because they didn't really move on it. But I'm a big advocate for one, I think Tony Bennett understands how to develop a point guard in a very, very, very uniquely good way. But 2, he's not abusive. I know he's not abusive. And 3, you snap your leg in 20 places and never play again. A Virginia degree is not such a bad thing, right? I'm pretty consistently wanting kids to go to the highest level of academic situation that they can in general. But you know how many times I've had a school dropped from a top 100 players list? I mean, dozens. And I'm talking about a lot of the times, not even a family I know particularly well. Again, anyone can hurt you. So treat your players right, and try to de-racistfy yourself. We kind of talked about before the interview formally started, and to the guys that are watching, there's a pastor named Stephen Furtick, and he did a seminar on race where he sat down with a pastor named John Gray. Stephen Furtick's white, John Gray's black. And I gather they've been friends for a long time. And Stephen Furtick started by saying that I'm going to say some things that aren't right. right? I'm still learning. I'm still trying to grow. And in this conversation, I'm going to say things that are going to sound racist or at least racially insensitive or rub people the wrong way. And I apologize for that in advance. But help me work through the things I say that aren't right, rather than trying to get me to shut the fuck up, because I really am trying. And so to all the white coaches out there that know in your heart you're a little bit racist, if you're speaking up and trying, I have your back, and I think that Brandon does too. As long as you're trying and you say 9 things that are good and 2 things that are cringeworthy, we're not going to tie a rock around your ankle and throw you in the river.
Yeah.
We're going to try to help. We're going to try to help you. We're going to walk you through.
Nobody's going to get it 100% right.
And try to help you process why the things that you said were not cool. We're not okay. We're, if not racist, then racially biased. But I definitely do think that we as white people need to help people who are trying to become allies rather than pushing them away because they're not good enough allies yet. And I think that there are too many white people who are on our side who sort of have an unrealistic expectation of perfection, right? I wasn't a perfect ally when I got started in 1988, and I'm still not. And I'm probably never going to be. And so the last thing I need to do is beat the shit out of a potential white ally who's new to trying to join the right cause and push them away. So I try to police my own tone when I'm talking with white people about racism. And I encourage that all of our fellow allies to do the same. Because again, we didn't start out on the racism scale. I think I started off at about a 6.5. And from 88 till today, I think I'm down to about a 1.5. I still think I'm a racist. I've made a lot of progress. I'm continuing to challenge myself. I'm continuing to read and listen and learn and engage. And I'm going to keep doing that. But I hope that the other white people out there who were 1s, 2s, 3s, even 4s, I hope we're not slamming the 5s and 6s who maybe are trying to start their journey, toward the right side of that scale. So anyway, my friend, I appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah, you bet, man. Appreciate you having me on.
We'll stay in touch. And like I said, I'm happy that you've been in this fight for a long time. And I know that you always will be. And I think that you're probably going to join me. I sent a tweet the other day saying I do not mind the recent additions to the anti-racism bandwagon. There's plenty of room for all. Just don't go trying to jump right back the fuck off once it gets difficult or challenging. Right? Yeah. That's what I'm paying attention to. I'm paying attention to who's new to the bandwagon. Right? It was not a crowded bandwagon 2.5 months ago. No. It was like, think about the white people in basketball who were, I mean, what's the list? You, me, Poneman, Trigonis, and then I'm not bullshitting you. I can't think of a 5th one off the top of my head. Right? It was not. We had lots of room on the bandwagon. We had lots of room, and I'm glad. I'm glad people are on the bandwagon now. Sincerely, with utter sincerity.
Well, I think now guys like you and Poneman, because I know that regardless of what I said privately and stuff was never publicly loud enough. But guys like you and Poneman that have been publicly loud enough for a long time, now everybody sees it, because before, I mean, how many people kind of looked at you and said like, all right, yeah, you got to tone it down just a little bit.
Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, we get it. Well, now everybody actually gets it.
Right. Sort of starting to. They want to get it. They want to.
The people that want to get it now get it.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of people that want to go down the isolation train, and we just got to keep yelling so that they get off that, I guess. So
I personally intend to carefully monitor those who jump right back off the bandwagon based on convenience and comfort, and I personally intend to hold them accountable in absolutely any way that I can find. And that very much includes conversations with parents and grassroots coaches and skills coaches and high school coaches, pointing out, like, yeah, if you jump off the bandwagon now that you've, you know, and you jump back off, I'm just letting you know. Any white coaches watching, I'm letting you know that I'm going to have conversations and I'm going to chop your balls off every single chance I get, now and forever. And I've already done a lot of that, but I'm here to publicly announce that that's my intention moving forward. And guys like Brandon and myself, we do talk to a lot of people. Get a lot of phone calls from unexpected places asking for advice. Hey, Pete, you sent a kid to this kid a long time. What'd you think? Don't go there. He's a fucking racist. And so the frequency of these conversations is going to be hastening. And I've already started pursuing the conversations rather than having the conversations pursue me.
Right. So
previously, I was mostly chopping balls when someone asked my opinion. Now I'm going to be more freely offering my opinion and proactively chopping balls. But not to the people who've shown me they're racist in the past and are now on the bandwagon and trying to do better. Just don't jump off the bandwagon. So anyway, my man, we'll talk soon. And I got a busy day. I know you do as well, but I appreciate your time. And I'm actually probably going to post this today because I'm trying to alternate a black voice, a white voice, a black voice, a white voice. And so the last person to speak up was black. So I think I'm going to post this one today. I've got a couple more coming. But
okay.
Anyway,
Sorry, I turned your 15 minutes into an hour 15. Sorry.
Hey, no, it's a good thing. I knew you'd have a lot to say, and like I said, I appreciate your time and your friendship.
Yep, you bet, buddy.
Cheers,
Be good.
man. Okay.
Bye.